Hello, welcome to Zest Prime. As part of this video, we are going to understand how to use at the rate of primary qualifier along with auto-while and qualifier. So basically, we are trying to understand how to use at the rate of primary annotation along with at the rate of qualifier and at the rate of auto-while. So before going to the at the rate of primary annotation, so as per the previous video, we have seen how to use the at the rate of qualifier. So mainly we are going to use it. So when we have more than one implementation for a given interface, so that time you can use at the rate of qualifier and define a specific name and try to get the corresponding implementation wherever it is required. So that's the way you can able to differentiate and get the corresponding implementation by using the at the rate of qualifier that we have seen in the previous video. So now we are going to see when you have multiple or more than one implementation for a given interface. So we are going to use at the rate of primary annotation, and we are going to get, or we are going to make one implementation as primary and the rest is secondary. So that's the way we are going to make it. So we are going to understand this one with an example. So we can use the existing example, so without creating the new one. So let me create a new copy of the existing implementation. So this is the previous one what we have created it. So now I am just going to paste it and rename Spring primary. So this is the one, so we are going to use. So let me update the pom.xml with the same project name so that it won't give any confusion for us. So this is the example we are going to use it to understand the at the rate of primary. So let me import it. So I'm just going to use the existing application. I'm not created any new thing. So that's the way we can reuse it our time. So let me open the project structure of the application. So if you see our previous example, so we have two implementation for employee. So contract employee and permanent employee of one interface. So this is the interface, right? So this is the one interface, and for this interface we have two implementation. One is permanent employee and the second one is contract employee. So two implementations. So last time we have used the last time we have tried different ways to use it, like at the rate of qualifier we have used it at the property level and at the constructor level and at the setter getter level we have used it. So now what we are going to do it, we are not going to use at the rate of qualifier, so we are going to use at the rate of primary. So where to apply this annotation? So you have to decide which implementation we have to make it as a primary. Say for instance, I want to make it as a permanent employee as a primary and rest are secondary. Rest can be one or more than one. So in that case, you can come down over here at the rate of primary. So this is the way we are making permanent employee implementation as the primary. Rest of the implementation are secondary. So we don't need to mention secondary, but by default it will consider all of the implementation of the employee as a secondary. So that will not be initiated Spring container when you are trying to auto it. So let me come back to the controller part. First we are going to see it qualifier at the rate of property level, and then we will be trying to use the at the rate of setter getter. So let me comment out. I just removed everything, setter getter, and I'm going to remove it, constructor. So we don't have anything, so we have only one API. I'm going to define it. We don't need anything, just I'm going to clean up. That's it. So I just cleaned up most of the things. I just kept only one employee. API name is employee, that's it. So if you see here, our controller is very clean now, so we don't have a lot of previously used code. Just use the same name. Now you can make it, this is the auto wire. Yes, now if you can see here, so we have more than one implementation for our interface, permanent employee, contract employee, but we have just to, in our controller, just we have used auto wire, but we have not mentioned anything at the rate of qualifier. We are not using any specific name. So which implementation it going to pick? So that's the way we are going to define as a primary qualifier. So now this will treat as a primary, and rest of the implementation will be ignored it, so that will not be used it. So how can you test it? So you can initiate or you can start your Spring Boot main application, and then you can call it the API. Your application is ready, and now you can open a browser, localhost/employee. So if you see here, when I'm calling the permanent or EMP, so what is happening? I'm just calling EMP, but by default it is trying to pick the permanent employee details. Let me come back here. So it's returning. So that means when you have more than one implementation for a given interface, you can use at the rate of primary for whichever implementation you want to make it as a primary. Rest are secondaries. Rest of the implementation will not be initialized. So this is the way you can make one implementation as a primary, rest of the implementation are secondary. Okay, now let me stop this server. Now you want to make this contract employee as the primary. So always the condition is always you have to make primary only one implementation. So you cannot make more than one implementation as the primary. Why? Because Spring container will get confused which one we have to initialize. So in this case you will be getting an exception. So let me show you the exception, and let me start this Spring application first. Then we will see the exception, what exception we are going to get it over here. Because now we can see here two implementation we had made the primary and contract, sorry, permanent and contract employees both are primary, and we can see here the Spring application itself, it is not starting, it's giving an exception. What's the exception? I'm just going to see it out. Yes, if you see here, right, so no qualifier or more than one primary. So it's saying more than one qualifiers are being treated as a primary, it's ambiguity. So this is the issue we'll be getting, the contract and permanent employee. So to avoid this one, we have to make always one implementation as the primary and rest are secondary. Secondary you don't need to mention, by default it will treat as a secondary. And now we made only contract employee primary and permanent employee we have removed it. Now let me restart our application. Now we can see our Spring application started successfully without any issues, and let me come back to the browser and test it. You can see here your contract employee details are written back. So this is the way you can able to make the one of the implementation as primary, rest of the implementation or secondary. Now in this case, contract employee became a primary and permanent employee became secondary. So it's not invoking. So you'll be getting contract employee back to the browser. So this is the way you can able to use the at the rate of primary and make one implementation as a primary, rest or a secondary. Yeah, I think that's all about this video. If you like the video, you can subscribe to the channel for more subsequent updates, and thank you so much for your time.